This episode is brought to you by Blue Sky CBD. Okay, I don't think I've gotten a full night's sleep since I became a mom, which is like over 4 years now. And I feel like I've tried everything, but none of it worked. You know what did? Blue Sky CBD. I love Blue Sky CBD because each gel contains 25 milligrams of CBD and 25 milligrams of CBN and 0 THC. Check out Blue Sky CBD's Sleep Gel 4-pack sampler for just $6 or their 10-pack sample for $20 at bluesky-cbd.com. Oh, and you can use promo code CityCastDenver to get 30% off your order. Just go to bluesky-cbd.com. Today on CityCast Denver, the neighborhood many Denverites call RiNo went through a huge transition over the last 20 years, with artists moving into empty warehouses and real estate prices going up, up, up. But quietly over the past year, the neighborhood has entered a new era, with the money train slowing down and community leaders disagreeing on what's next. The RiNo Art District just hired a new executive director to help figure that out, and she joins me today to talk about the changing role of art in Denver's most famous art district. Oh, and stick around to the end of this episode for a fascinating sponsored segment about the science of CBD from our friends at Blue Sky CBD. Today is Thursday, November 6th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Daisy Podness McGowan, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thanks so much, Bree. It's great to be here.
So you've just taken over the RiNo Art District after a very tumultuous year behind the scenes of politicking in the neighborhood. And I know you've got a big challenge ahead of you. What does that challenge look like for you?
Well, right now it's a beautiful space to be in of learning. We are marking 20 years of the RiNo Art District this month, and it's a great inflection point. You know, I am stepping in. I'm honored to step in a new way, but I've also been around and part of the district and the Denver arts community for decades now. I probably went to some of the same raves that you did in the 90s yes. in those warehouses. It was a lot of fun. I can't admit that I remember exactly where they were, but that was the whole point, right?
I was going to say most of them I think are gone.
Probably, but the memories remain.
Yeah.
But there's been art being made in RiNo Art District for a long time before it had that name. And I think to your question, it's an exciting time. There's a new page being turned with the direction that came out of a tumultuous period. And I think that's how communities work together to collectively decide how to move forward. And I'm excited to be a part of that.
Well, let's get into a little bit of the history of the district, and then I think we'll get to the present day a little bit more with what's ahead. So I do just kind of want to talk about how we got here, because I think many listeners will know RiNo as the art district as it exists now. But like you said, I think you and I were both around in the 90s, and it was a lot of cool stuff happening and, you know, warehouses just off Brighton Boulevard and around that area. How do we convey what it was like back then compared to now?
It is hard to, if you didn't see it then, it's hard to imagine. It was, you know, a heavily industrial area, and artists moved in and started moving in as they do. You know, it's something where you need to basically find space to create, freedom to do that, and affordability. And those things were in spades in the RiNo area, which was not called that. The city actually brought that in. They wanted to call the industrial area that was sort of burgeoning River North. And some of the artists got together. Tracy Weil, one of the co-founders officially with Jill Hadley Hooper. And they said, well, River North is an art district in Chicago, and it's a little lame to just copy and paste. So Jill came up with the idea for RiNo and come up with the cute RiNo logo that it became identified as. And they basically just started drawing a line around where there were artist studios and breweries. And the breweries are still going strong there. We still have one of the larger concentrations of breweries in the area. And the artist studios were more challenged as it developed. But yeah, going back to that, you know, along the river there, where the art park is now, was a big industrial zone. Some of the warehouses, you know, were very active and some were kind of falling into disrepair. And artists came in and brought their creativity. They brought their ingenuity, their resourcefulness, and not all of them, owned those spaces. So there were mixed results when it started developing. That some, were not able to stay because the buildings were owned by others, and then there were many arts-minded building owners that you saw across the whole Denver area. I mean, really, RiNo has never been an island unto itself. Although I think some of the early folks living there felt like they were off on an island. It was always connected to that larger art scene in Denver.
Yeah, and I think the island part, I know well from putting on events there, and particularly working with the folks that lived and worked through Glob, which is still in action today.
It is.
Rhinoceropolis. But I know I would be telling my sort of like friends I worked with at the mall, like, hey, come to this thing. And they would go, there's nothing there. Or like, I've driven there and it's kind of scary. And it really, I mean, the scary thing I've never understood, it was just desolate, if anything.
Yeah.
There weren't sidewalks yet.
No sidewalks.
It was a lot of, like you said, industrial. Bud's warehouse was there forever. It was like scrap yards, junk yards.
If you were a raver like us back in the days, you knew that was your playground. And you're like, we just have to uncover the right doorway to get into to unlock the mystery, which was my experience of Rhinoceropolis. My husband took me there on one of our first dates. And it was this labyrinth of creativity and people kind of rolling out of their bunks. And one of his students was living there. And yeah, it was a special place, and everything that led to it shutting down. And then, the changes there. I think the spirit of that DIY is something that's so important to keep alive in RiNo, and that still really inspires me right now.
So thinking about that version of the RiNo area and what we know today, and what we know as the Arts District, like, can we talk a little bit more about how that came to be? Because honestly, looking at the area now versus what it looked like then, I mean, I'm not just thinking about the built environment, but like the vibe and everything it's so different. What is the story? I know it's like some artists got together that were already living there. And then what happened? You know what I mean? How did we get there?
It's a super common story in art districts. So RiNo is a creative district, a certified creative district in the state, but art districts are something that you find in all 50 states. And they typically start with artist-minded building owners, arts supporters, and artists themselves creatively commanding space. And right now, there's a bunch of artists moving over to Rock Drill, which is an area in RiNo that is, really open for big studio spaces. But as some of the artists said, we're struggling because there's no walls, and how do we get heat in there? So here we are. We still have some of those spaces in RiNo. But going back to the idea of an art district and the kind of evolution of that organic energy is not something that you can manufacture. It is not something that you can capture and sell. It is something very special. But then to see that evolve over time and have the businesses coming in, folks want to come to that district. It was nice, I will say, to get those improvements of the sidewalks and some of the safety features. When I was walking through RiNo Art District around, I think 2015, there were so many people there, but they were just in the street with the cars, and it was not accessible if you had any mobility challenges. So some of those improvements are wonderful to see. And then you saw different businesses moving in there, and it changing really rapidly. And I think that rapid pace of change we've seen across all of Denver, much of Denver, and it's disorienting, and it's happening across much of our country and even internationally. Growing up in Seattle, before I came to Colorado in '93, I was in Seattle, and going back, it's unrecognizable. Belltown, which I loved growing up there, was so gritty and organic and full of artists and studios, and now it's just wall-to-wall condos and development and faceless, and it lost its identity, and that is something that is absolutely can be lost, and we have seen lost, I'm sure, in different parts of Denver. So trying to keep those elements in there is really important, and I think Denver just has so much to offer. And living full-time in this city since 2020, and just kind of being a observer, the way artists really are. I see a lot of passionate people that have tried really hard to keep that DIY spark, and some forces that are so fast and so huge that it's hard to keep up. And and
Well,
ride that wave.
let's talk about that, because I think that's where the tension is too, a little bit here with the district and then the artists themselves, and the affordability component here. So something equally close to my heart too. I was involved with the DIY community here for a long time, and as I mentioned, Glob and Rhinoceropolis still functions today as Squirm Gallery. The difference with these spaces, though, is people used to be able to live in them as well as create art in them and use them as a performance space. And with this shift of the district growing and the interests of businesses coming in and, wanting to put money into something like a bid or a arts district, that makes things really complicated, I think, because that in turn is part of this conversation about property values going up and things getting really expensive. And it's, as far as I know, the RiNo Art District has not been affordable to artists for at least a decade. And part of it is you can't live off the radar anymore, right? But like, what do you think about that? The district versus the sort of grittier nature, and the fact that those forces maybe made it unaffordable for the people that made it cool in the first place. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding something about the point of the district, which was started by two artists.
Yeah, well, it was started by those artists sort of stepping up, but it was started by a lot of artists. I mean, it took a whole collective movement, and I talked a bit about that collectivism. I mean, Denver's arts community really has been built on co-op galleries, which came out of this whole cooperative model. It's all about non-hierarchical collectivism. You've got to have somebody taking the lead and being the communication point for the city. So RiNo actually started as a registered neighborhood organization, which I, in my role, lead. And it's really interesting because they said, well, we just wanted to get updates from the city and kind of know what was going on. And that's really where, that started. And then when the creative districts came up, and the certification for that, they applied for that. And they were the second one after the Santa Fe Art District in the state to get the creative district certification from the state arts agency. And so, yeah, it just kind of organically built in that way, as far as nobody had a plan and mapped it all out. But to your point, I think I would argue that all of Denver has this problem for artists and creatives of affordability, and not just for them, for, anybody who is working class or just trying to make it with 3 jobs, which many artists often do, right? I mean, I worked in my 20s, so many jobs, it's a lifestyle that's not for everybody. Having said that, I think it's really important to have the makers living in the area, and I would say that's true across all of Denver. And RiNo, in many ways, like I mentioned, Belltown in Seattle, it's kind of like it's such a visible change, and the rapid pace of change is a little disorienting. But there are many parts of Denver that are not really affordable for artists. Thinking about safety and requirements. As a mother, the ghost ship fire in the Bay Area was horrific. Like the thought of my children being in those spaces and not being safe. I think all of us in the creative community saw all the sides with Rhinoceropolis, but like at the end of the day, part of me was like, gosh, I can understand wanting to keep folks safe, even from, there's always people living in their studios or finding itinerant ways to live, or, safety is like a relative thing, but from a city level, being able to say, like, we know this is safe. And the tension there, I think what you're talking about, though, goes beyond to that bigger issue of affordability in Denver overall. And Denver has developed really fast and has become a challenging place for people who are trying to make a creative life work without their own resources. And that's true in every large city, unfortunately.
I just want to push back a little bit, because you said the whole city's experiencing this and has been for the last, at least in this wave of unaffordability. It's all over. And I know many artists I know don't want to be thought of as anyone separate, or that they're better or different than a working class family that needs housing too. But this is an arts district, right? It's labeled itself as an arts district. And if people can't afford to live in the arts district who are artists, and it just feels like it is a little bit of a different problem.
Right, because the whole city's not an art district.
Yeah.
If I had my way, it would be. But yeah, that's what makes RiNo special. I hear you saying that. And I think that's absolutely important to keep at the forefront, and that's what I'm really excited about. And with my new role is to be able to work to make that more of a reality.
This episode is brought to you by MultiPass. Listen, I lived through the era of the total Ticketmaster takeover. Wildly high service fees, big clunky websites, bots, scammers, Pearl Jam suing them. You know, the pains of ticket buying. But it doesn't have to be this way. MultiPass is here. This wonderful, local, community-minded ticketing and events platform offers benefits to not just the people putting on great shows, but the people who want to go to those great shows. Proudly based in Denver and deeply rooted in the local event and creative scene, MultiPass offers a promoter dashboard to boost attendance with built-in tools to add street teams and track performance. They also have revenue sharing tools, which automatically splits ticket revenue between producers, performers, and promoters, meaning no more complicated payout hassles. For customers, MultiPass offers more than just a place to buy tickets. Its unique community chat feature unlocks once you RSVP. That means you can connect with other like-minded fans for meetups at shows, events, parties, club nights, and more. MultiPass is designed to help everyone in the event ecosystem win, not just the platform. Learn more at multipass.com. That's multipass.com.
This episode is brought to you by Denver Film. Because movie lovers across the city are getting hyped. It's almost time for Denver's biggest celebration of cinema, and you don't want to miss it. I'm talking red carpets, celebs, Hollywood moguls, exclusive parties and VIP events, and you can be a part of it. Honestly, I've always had a great time at Denver Film Fest. Not only do they bring out so many good movies that you can just show up to basically a random theater on a Tuesday night on a whim and see something interesting, but you also have a chance to dress up nice, go out to a packed screening of one of the year's best, because they always bring the best. The Film Fest returns for its 48th year, running from October 31st to November 9th. They're featuring over 200 of the world's best new films, as well as all kinds of other great events. Choose your adventure and get tickets at denverfilm.org. That's denverfilm.org.
We were talking about Ghost Ship earlier. So Ghost Ship was a warehouse, a similar type of DIY space in the Bay that had pallets for stairs up to the second level, which it caught on fire and folks were trapped in the top. I don't need to relive all the gory details, but 36 folks died. I have a good friend who lives here who lost her bandmate and her best friend and was working that night at the door.
I'm still tearing up.
It's a rough experience, but I think the frustration from the artists here was within a week or a couple weeks of that happening, the fire department, who had signed off every year for the last 10 years on their space being safe, all of a sudden said it wasn't habitable. And then we had artists that were homeless. And this was under someone who had led the district two times ago.
Yeah.
Gave those artists Starbucks gift cards and was kind of like, sorry. And I think that, at least for me, left a bad taste in my mouth, because I thought, what is the point of an art district if artists can't come to you when they need real help?
Yeah.
And I wonder what you see the role is between the relationship between the artist and the art district.
Yeah. Well, an art district at the end of the day is a small arts nonprofit, so to ask that to solve those huge problems and to be able to pull those levers, I can understand why it might be a perception that it's possible, but I think realistically, that's a pretty big lift. I remember going to those meetings at Redline and hearing all the strong feelings, understandable. I mean, it was like a wave that just washed through really quickly. And I think that was also disorienting. And I would say that, talking to everybody. And so I'm in my first 90 days and I do a learning plan when I switch roles. And it's my happy spot because I just love interviewing people and learning about them. You probably have a similar
sure.
passion for that. And talking to people involved in the early days of the district. We're going to be honoring some of them with awards this upcoming Saturday. I just hear how much people really wanted to, make a positive impact and to give the artists a collective voice. And I think they all were, doing the best they could with a fast-moving situation. I remember being in those discussions and how passionate and painful it was. I think you want to pull everybody in and take care of everybody. I think some of the city leadership at that point really had the levers that were needed to pull and to make those changes. And I hope to have their ear and be able to talk to them and step up, and be in those spaces where decisions are made. I know we have a very arts supporting mayor right now, which is great. But I can imagine with that fast moving situation and when you're dealing with liability and fear, frankly, I mean, it's hard to, if you weren't there and hearing that news at the time and the fear of folks' public safety. And I think it was just complicated.
I guess I'm a little confused, though, is where the money is still going to come from, because, like you said, there was this tumultuous time with the business owners who were, I hope I'm paraphrasing this correctly, they didn't want to see so much of their money just going to the district, the arts district, but needed to see things like, cleanups and security and safety and things that other business improvement districts generally fund with their money. So how is that working? Because you all are separated now.
Yeah, so those things were being funded, and I think the challenge was communicating it all really clearly and for everybody to be on the same page. So I think that's what this is going to allow, because those things were happening, but I think that from a visibility side, I think there was not what everybody wanted, is my take, coming in as an outsider. And so I think this new page in some ways is not a dramatic change as far as the funding. So we are in a grantor-grantee model with the bid and the JID. So basically what that means is the way I've worked and run every other nonprofit in the arts for the last 25 years is that we will request funding and support from not just the bid and the JID, but from other funders, excuse me.
Like, where else would it come from for this? Or where would you ask, I guess?
Okay. I think typically it's going to be a mix of everything from SCFD funding to private foundations. Think about the major arts foundations in Denver. The state arts agency has direct funding for creative districts, as does Denver Arts and Venues and City of Denver. So it's a whole mix. And then on top of that, I feel really excited about bringing in individual donors, because I've been able to fundraise for the arts for, coming up on 3 decades. And the coolest thing about it, much like when you're an artist and you first sell your artwork, when I was a young artist, I was like, I'm not going to sell my art. That's not right. And then I sold an artwork, and it meant so much to have that personal connection to a collector. It meant so much they were bringing my art into their home. And the same way, raising money for arts nonprofits, when someone donates $20 to your nonprofit, wow, that is so cool. And what could that look like? Everything from, we have a wonderful membership program, expanding on that. It could look like Colorado Gives Day giving. It could look like an endowment, which is a baseline of funding that provides ongoing support for a nonprofit, which can be transformational. It could look like a naming gift for one of our buildings. I mean, everything's out there, and it's all about deepening a connection. And ultimately, what I'm hoping to do is connect. We've got a lot of new neighbors in RiNo. We've got a lot of longtime folks. We've got a lot of people in the city who care about that district and its history and its future. And I want to connect them all in all the ways that are meaningful for them.
What do you see as the role of the artist in the RiNo Art District in 2025? Where do artists and art play a role?
Well, they're central to it. I mean, I think that tagline, "Where Art is Made," is really important. I think of art expansively, and I think getting to know the business owners in these last few weeks, it's just reinforced that for me. I mean, a chef, as much of a creative as a visual artist, as a musician, as a performer, honestly, a brewer. There's so much creativity in small businesses. Business owners and entrepreneurs are really creative people, and that can often bring out a lot of passions, right? And so I think that is the most important thing in my role, is to keep that spark vibrant. And it is not something any of us should take for granted. I mean, you can see parts of the city where they've lost that spark, thinking about the 16th Street and how much resources.
I was going to say, the city's just put a bunch of money into there.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I have been part of other cities, efforts to try to bring a cultural identity to their city. You cannot put a price on that organic, DIY, artist-created identity that RiNo has. Even with all of the changes, it is
I was going to say, do you think it still has that?
I think it very much does. And I think it's a mistake to overlook that and to not keep that spark alive.
Well, Daisy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Bree.
Hey, a couple of things. You should know that the RiNo Art District is a sponsor of CityCast Denver, but that has nothing to do with why we wanted to talk to Daisy today. And finally, a sponsored segment from our friends at Blue Sky CBD. Hey, it's Bree here with Dr. Dorninger from Blue Sky CBD. Hey, doctor.
Good morning.
Good morning. So before we get into all the products and routines, can you walk us through what healthy sleep actually looks like? Like, what's happening during REM and deep sleep, and why does consistency matter so much?
So what happens during your day is your whole body gets super inflamed from everything, from the diesel fumes you breathe in during your bike ride, to detoxifying your own hormones, to stress, to your boss yelling at you, to the workout you missed, to the overtraining you did, to the sitting you did. And at the end of the day, you are full of inflammatory cytokines. And what sleep is supposed to do is release melatonin and restorative growth hormones to help antioxidize, deflame the body, and literally rejuvenate, regenerate, and resuscitate all those cells that have gotten damaged and beat down over a long, hard day's work.
I feel like many of us are lucky to even get like 5 hours of sleep without it being disrupted. And I just wonder what's really behind that. Like, why can't people fall asleep and stay asleep anymore? Is it like stress, screens, all the above?
All the above and sometimes overstated. The number 1 and 2 reasons for not falling asleep and staying asleep is problems with steady oxygen and problems with steady fuel. Especially at altitude, sleep apnea is so underrated. And if your brain perceives low oxygen, it freaks out, spikes cortisol and adrenaline, known as norepinephrine, epinephrine, and kicks the melatonin growth hormone healing party out of your brain. The same happens with blood sugar, whether it's some Krispy Kremes you had before bed or too much red wine, or you've been eating seed oils all day and your blood sugar's off. You can also wake up your brain. And it's simply steady fuel, steady oxygen to make sure you have a non-panicked, restorative night's sleep.
Well, let's talk about the products. How does CBD or CBN help people like feel calmer or fall asleep faster? Like, what's going on in our bodies?
Well, the first thing is everything I'm going to tell you about is about cannabidiol isolate. It is not full spectrum hemp. It is pure CBD that all the literature I'm going to quote is on. And CBD, cannabidiol, is an uplifting productivity molecule. It helps you feel cool, calm, collected, focused, and relaxed. And that is part of the sleep formula to really bring down that inflammation after a long day. And that's about 25 milligrams of pure cannabidiol in the sleep gels. The CBN sets up decompression. So it allows your brain to uncouple from a busy day, the to-do list, and it says, hey, let's shift to GABA, your cool, calm, and collected molecule, and settle down. Now, THC and a glass of wine do the same thing, but they come with blood sugar problems at 3 a.m. that wake you up.
So for anyone thinking about trying CBD or CBN for sleep, what should they know going in? Like, do you have any tips or guidelines for someone who may be using this for the first time?
I'm a clinician at the end of the day, and it's about applying things to improve patient outcomes. And what we see is that it can take up to 2 weeks for the sleep gels to work. So you have these patients who go, oh my gosh, the first night I took a sleep gel, which is 25 milligrams CBD CBN, I fell asleep. It was incredible, and I woke restored. Some people, it takes up to 2 weeks. If you're on your second or third night of one Blue Sky sleep gel, then I tell people to trial 2. And what can happen is 2 a night for 2 weeks should absolutely show up on your iWatch and your Oura Rings and your smart devices. So the last tip is if you wake in the middle of the night, it's okay to take another sleep gel. If you have dogs or pets or kids, no one's going to get that injured from 25 milligrams of CBD or CBN, but I say keep it in the packet with a little scissor, cut the scissor open, take another sleep gel at 2, 3 in the morning.
Could you tell me a little bit about the quality of Blue Sky?
Yeah, so I was headhunted to work for Blue Sky as Director of Research and Development. And to be honest with you, I didn't know anything about cannabidiol. And patients would come in and ask me, as a leader in natural medicine, their thoughts. So I actually took the job to force myself to study all the cannabidiol literature. And I chose Blue Sky because it's a 0 THC, and I'm not anti-cannabis, but we wanted a non-THC product that government workers can use, that firefighters and police can use, who also need a good night's sleep and will give you less tickets.
Especially,
wake rested. Yeah. And it is 0 THC, third-party tested for purity and potency, which means the milligrams are 10% above or below on every final batch. And that what's in there is in there. It's actually just cannabidiol, MCT oil, and gel cap. And then lastly, cost per milligram. You're not going to find better value than the cost of the sleep gels for 25 milligrams CBD CBN.
That's awesome. Well, Dr. Dorninger, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
And listeners, I can tell you, I've tried these Blue Sky CBD sleep gels, and they have noticeably improved my sleep. Visit bluesky-cbd.com and use promo code CityCast at checkout and try a 10-pack of sleep gels for just $22. We'll have a link to that in the show notes as well, so you're just a click away. Thanks for listening. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Tracy Weil and Jill Hadley Hooper about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And hey, thanks to our new neighbors, Christy G and Jennifer R. What's up, Jen? Who just joined our membership program. You can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Denver neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye. You should have seen all those Wash Park people waiting for the compost truck to show up. There were so many micromanagers. My God.